Greetings, I'm Cuthbert Bucket, the scrawler east of Great Yarmouth, and runner-up for Person of the Year 2006. Content. Probably the word I dislike the most that isn't a slur. It's such a painfully drab word for any piece of media. Yes, dictionarily, it merely means what is contained within, but why people are so happy to use it to describe genuine works of art is beyond me. It's got all the vagueness of stuff with none of the unprofessional charm. Why do I make a big deal out of this? Well, I'm not just talking about, how the word sounds, but also people's wild obsession with a game having... In fact, there's a lot of things I wish to talk about here. This might be the vastest subject I've ever covered in a video. Mainly because this will be the first time I talk about content beyond video games. Imagine how much better that last sentence would have sounded if I said the word stuff instead. It is ironic, I do oft think, how content and content are written both in sync. For when one is hell-bent on getting content in acres, chances of contentment are set to meet their makers. Let's talk about how the word sounds used in sentences. I've already talked a bit about how clinical and dull it sounds, but, let's dig a little deeper into why. TV shows are content, movies are content, video games are content, books are content, stage shows are content, this video you're watching right now is content. Are these things similar? No! They're all still content. Calling things content is uncaring to what the thing actually is. Maybe it's a commentary on how much garbage is constantly streamed into our eye sockets. We're bombarded with so much light, colour and sound that all it is to us now is content. I mean, some people would describe me as a content creator, right? I make content for YouTube. You know what else you could technically call a content creator? Someone taking a shit. I wonder how long it takes for glory to fade away. Some say minutes for reason. I prefer to say seasons. Television. Now, I know lots of you have abandoned TV, or at least think you have, and now I've cast you back to before YouTube was huge. Now, I'm a fan of things that end. I'm not making an edgy joke about, how my favourite part of the movie is when it ended. No. I just like it when things are complete, wrapped up, and beautiful. Where the whole thing was so good, and now it's over, so it can't become no longer good. Now, I like The Simpsons. I don't even need to finish this. You know what I'm gonna fucking say. Yeah, I don't enjoy modern Simpsons much at all. It's a long discussion, but, my point is, I would have been happier had the show ended at season 10. Imagine it, though. No more discussion about when to stop watching. Very few cruddy episodes. You could go out, buy a box set of the whole of The Simpsons, and watch all of it without a single entirely bad episode. Sure, you'd still have Principal and the Pauper, but that episode is at least funny. I could talk about The Simpsons for a whole video, but everyone's done that. My view on this matter is, if a thing ends and it ended whilst it was good, it's a good thing. You don't need endless amounts of a show because eventually it's going to run a little bit dry. Think of a show that ended. You might miss having new episodes to watch and it might not have gotten to actually wrap up loose ends. But chances are, it managed to be good the whole time. No, I'm not happy when they announced another Rick and Morty season. I haven't wholeheartedly enjoyed that show since season 2. It's why I love stuff that just conclusively ends. A lot of non-soap opera British shows are really short, and they're great. You can watch all of it in one day, then it ends. You can move on, satisfied, and watch something else. Hell, you can return to it a few years down the line, and it's not a slog to get through. Mr. Bean only has 14 episodes. I know it doesn't end, but you can go and rewatch them, and they're still great fun. Fawlty Towers, 12 episodes. Bottom, 18 episodes. Blackadder, 24 episodes. The Young Ones, 12 episodes. These shows are classics because they didn't outstay their welcome. There's already more media out in the world than you can see in a lifetime. Why do you need shows to keep on going? Plugged in, unplugged, players 1 to 4. Processors whirring, using multi-core. It goes for hours not stuck to one task. After beating no games, nor high score, the players hate things that aren't a chore. Complaining about length is a mask forevermore. Well, video games had to show up somewhere. They, indeed, are content. But how many hours of content are they? Well, how many hours of content should they be? Well, for some people, if a game is less than 10 hours of content, then it's a bit lacking. For others, 30 hours is too much. For me, 15 hours is just about right, actually. What's going on here? Video games. Video games, being media, are subject to contemplation. When someone thinks of buying a game, they want to know how much stuff there is to do inside of it, and how long, on average, it will take to beat it. This matters a lot. As for the money spent, they want to know how much time they'll waste playing it. Okay, I feel my tone of voice is giving stuff away here. But I have a serious bone to pick with this. The whole thing of how much am I spending per hour of gameplay, it feels utterly misjointed from how video games actually work. This recent, whilst I'm making this video anyway, tweet by Daniel Lusick isn't too interesting by itself, but what fascinates me are the replies. Most of them are pretty reasonable people on both sides of the length argument, each with their reasons for liking longer or shorter games. Then you've got the insane people. It's Twitter. It's expected. A lot of people miss this guy's point. He doesn't hate games above 10 hours. He simply tends to enjoy shorter games more. But a lot of people missed something very important. A lot of people in here are talking about $60 games. But this guy works in the marketing department for Devolver Digital, an indie game publishing company. Most indie games lie in the 15 hours or less category, and also cost an average around $18. Is it unreasonable to think that a guy who works for an indie game publisher would tend to like indie games? Or at least be trying to advertise them. It's his job. Literally. Now look, I'm not unbiased here. I prefer shorter games in general. So where am I actually going with this? Stacking games into piles of how many hours of content they have is completely pointless. How do you categorize the amount of content in Spelunky? You can literally see everything in the game in under an hour if you're good enough. How long is the game then? Well, it could take you hundreds of hours to get that good at the game. It could also take you 70 hours. By the standards of other games, like Metroid Dread, which is a 10-hour long game, Spelunky is a 1-hour long game. And what's the price per hour ratio? If you buy a 20-hour long game for $60 and love it, then you shouldn't mind a $15 long game that costs 5 hours. Even then, your playtime can vary. And what if you like replaying the game? Does that add hours to the playtime? And what if you get a game for cheaper? Does that mean you can justify the length being short? Then different genres justify different lengths. A 20-hour long JRPG is insanely short, but an indie game that contains 20 hours of content would be kind of longer than average. If both cost $50, the JRPG would be too short, and the artsy indie game would be overpriced. But if a 20-hour-long action story game comes out at full price, it'll probably be called just right. So does it actually matter how long the game is for the price? Depends on the game. So is it dependent on how fun those hours are? Perhaps. Devil May Cry is a game that's technically pretty short, but the leveling system carries over across replays. How long is the game? Until you stop leveling, or until you stop seeing new levels. Games with random generation technically have infinite content, but up to what point do you count new content? When you see new generation, we've done everything in the game, what if the game doesn't end, like Minecraft? If endlessly playing different old generations counts as content, and one of you plays a half of the game not counts as extra content. If you always do a similar but not exact thing in a random generated game, then different upgrade parts of the game count as extra content. If a game is super fucking hard, but can be beaten in 6 hours if you're good at it, then is it a 6-hour long game, or a 200-hour long one? By this logic, Pac-Man is a 2-minute long game, as you play the exact same stage over and over again, getting largely harder each time. And if in other games you play the hard difficult doesn't count extra content, then why should Pac-Man? By this logic, chess is a game worth spending £5,000 for a set, as it takes hundreds and hundreds of hours to master. But wait, no, chess is only worth £1, because a game of chess might only last a few minutes. And games with boring grinders are well worth $60, but streamlined games that are short and very fun to play aren't. Because they aren't long enough, but the fact that nature of video game determines that you can hit once every few years and still get joy out of it. Therefore giving endless content, less content is whatever is unique, and analysis of artistic levels pointless and shouldn't add to it. It just makes less and less sense the more you think about it. Value is what you get out of something, not what you put in. Content obsession has blinded us to this.
Open the curtains, run out the front. Look now, it's digital, good fucking luck. Yet dumbass people are filling with rage, throwing their food by the load of truck. They want to watch a movie, you stupid cunt.
Movies have always been my go-to watchable entertainment. I love the idea of putting one on, sitting down, and just getting a complete tale delivered to you, and then it's done, and you loved it. Yes, they can also tie in with an overall series, but if you can also enjoy each one individually, then that's great. A film can be anywhere between 5 minutes and 3 hours, and as long as it's well paced to its length, then it's fine. Now, I'm not averse to sequels. The original Star Wars trilogy is a fun watch, and could only have been one movie. But it's about when something gets big, like Star Wars. I dislike the idea of extending things that had already concluded. Inherently, you're working an uphill battle making a prequel or a sequel trilogy. Dang near everyone loves the original trilogy, so you could just hook it up to the content machine and generate a Mad Libs version of the original trilogy. Or if there's an iconic character in the original trilogy with a known backstory, you could chronicle that character's journey and unsubtly ruin all mystery behind it. Or hell, just making a spin-off that features, say, a younger version of a famous character with a mysterious backstory would be a good idea. I'd rather they spent more time making movies in the Star Wars universe that didn't contain any characters we knew about. But that's content, I guess. People want to see the characters they already know and get more Star Wars content. Sure. In fact, I think we'd all be happier people if there were only 3 Star Wars movies. No special editions, no overambitious undercooked prequels, no underambitious overproduced sequels. After all, my wishes of more movies in the same universe could easily be distorted and corrupted into something way worse than unnecessary sequels and prequels. Cinematic universes. Blech. Cinematic universes are a marketing tool that justifies companies shitting out absolute 5 out of 10 bland movies, and Marvel's one being incredibly successful makes every single fucking sleazy little mega corporation see it as a lucrative option. It's wild to me how people keep paying money to go watch films that look totally boring, whilst knowing they look totally boring. I know you might not know how good a movie actually is until you've seen it, but doing this encourages low effort, mass marketable stuff to be produced at levels not seen since the original movie boom. I am aware that every era of media is full of total bland guff, but collectively we can work to reduce the amount of garbage movies, right? I mean, I can't be the only one who thought the Sonic movie was absolutely yawn-worthy, and people only like it because it's a non-bad video game movie. Hey, look, don't take this the wrong way. I like movies a lot. I just wish I could be more excited for the stuff that hits cinemas. Whenever an independent or a strange movie is given time in the spotlight, it becomes a hit. People just need to be given more options than whatever's being made by big studios. This isn't just a movie issue, but I've only got so much time in the world. We go back to the land of games. Industry not up in flames. Content will be crashing, the studios need a thrashing. The end of big budget couldn't come sooner, with the end of crunch being the lampooner. Now, of course, I returned my gaze to video games. This time on the studios that create them instead of the people that play them. Most AAA studios create absolute garbage, pointlessly large, worryingly high budget video games that sell you XP boosts to make the game progress faster. They're disgusting. EA Sports games might be one of the worst things to ever happen to video games. In-app purchases designed to prey on underage players? This video is already negative enough. Let's focus on the development side of AAA games for now. To show their power, they create vast worlds with nothing in them. To show their budget, they crunch their developers to squeeze out every pixel of graphical fidelity. Most of these AAA games are schlock. Just boring, uninventive content. It's so often that they pad the game out of boring stuff, just so when you go on howlongtobeat.com, it looks more impressive. Padded out to 30 hours instead of being a more streamlined 16. In the industry right now, there's a real problem. All of the games are either made on shoestring budgets by indie devs, or made on massive, enormous budgets by equally massive teams of people. So either they have to overwork themselves because their budget is tight, or they get overworked because their bosses are corrupt and they need this game done in 5 weeks. Thing is, around 14 years ago, there was a solution to these problems that has all but disappeared. Indie games are A games, big budget titles are AAA games. Back then, there was a healthy AA scene. These mid-budget games worked on by medium-sized teams allowed a lot of leverage. Their games didn't have to perform amazingly because their budgets weren't sky high. They could be made relatively quickly without crunching because the teams are healthy size and they're not forced to push graphics to the extreme. I personally think that if we brought back AA teams, it could be used to reduce the amount of human suffering in the industry. Maybe an indie game could be AA funded, giving them budgetary flexibility and taking pressure off. Companies making more AA games could also allow those AAA games to be given, more time in the cooker, allowing the devs to not crunch to a harsh deadline because now there's a smaller game that fills the release schedule gap. Yes, I'm thinking very idealistically, but as budgets get higher and the world gets more oversaturated, these games may eventually find that people don't want to buy their over-budgeted, overworked, undercooked schlock anymore, and the industry will be forced to consider human rights. Pretty much I'm hoping for a crash. One that makes people realise that it's not about content, it's about art. And the people who make the things we enjoy are truly more important than filling up hours with vacuous nothingness. There was a man called Cuthbucket, who when he saw content said fuck it. Off his keyboard he dusted he's not to be trusted. Shoutouts to those from Nantucket. I covered a lot of things in this video here, and in the interest of time, I may not have gone into a crazy amount of detail on some things. Yes, I would feel ripped off if I paid 50 quid for a game that lasted 1 hour for 100% completion. Don't twist my words. An important thing regarding this video is also the fact it's an opinion piece. Mostly. No matter how many things I pose as factual, it's an opinion piece. Mostly. The thing I said about everyone being happy if there were only 3 Star Wars movies is absolutely facts though. This video's also been a tad awkward writing wise, I think, but I really just want to shoot my takes out here regarding content, because, when you think of things as content, just takes out what makes things interesting. And also, not everything I talked about in this video is of equal importance. The most important part, in my opinion, is the part about the video game industry. Even the film industry has more respect for the art than games. It's why I left it till last, so it would stick in your brain more. And speaking of leaving something till last, to lighten the mood, here's a look into a rule I've lived by for the past few years. It's done me good, and I hope you're able to benefit from it too. End of video. A reason to write poems. One more rule spoken. The rule of diminishing returns is as follows. The less often you do something, the more impactful it is when you do it. I love this because it's straight up true. My family haven't eaten out in about 4 years. Now, don't cry for me, it costs a lot and we'd rather spend the time and money on other things. However, I can remember each and every one of them as individual, fun and joyous moments. If you eat out often, you don't. They've all blended together into a massive memory slop. This is why I love short games so much. They do their unique thing just enough for it to hit, but never enough for its idea to diminish. I'll replay short games like once every 1 to 2 years, and they keep their luster every time. I mean, hell, I can replay some short games pretty rapidly, and the spark doesn't go away for a while because it's barely wearing it out with 3 relatively close playthroughs. Apply this to sweet treats to make them all the more sweeter. It also has a run-on effect of making you healthier. Hell, apply it to all unhealthy food and you'll live how I live. No attachment to shit food. It's also why I release a video only every so often, because it has a greater impact, and I can spend as much time as I feel on this. Obviously, it's not possible to apply this rule to every single thing in your life. We have to breathe pretty frequently in order to live, and it doesn't really matter if breathing loses its charm after a while, you know what I'm saying? It makes you realise why I dislike calling our entertainment content so much, right? It turns it into an endlessly consumable sludge to be eaten and re-eaten over and over again and come back for more in 10 seconds. You know your brain has this rule literally built into it. When you do something that releases dopamine or serotonin or fucking whatever, you'll get less and less from it if you repeat it over and over again in quick succession. It's why you get into vicious addiction cycles. That nicotine rush you got upon smoking your first cigarette is a tidal wave compared to the kiddie pool upon smoking your 100th. It's why I don't give a shit about drugs. Do them if you want, but my incredible dopamine fasting means I get incredible joy from very small things. No downsides. It's not as hard as you think to start dopamine fasting like me. It doesn't mean ignoring the bad parts of life. It costs you less money. It might be quite tricky. You may have to fight some bad habits, but the payoff is indescribable. Well, actually, it is. Contentment. Welcome to the cult of content.